Unleash Success podcast, where we break down the secrets of success to give you real tools and strategies that get real results. And now, here's your host, Corey Corpodian.
Welcome back to Unleash Success. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, just go to unleashsuccess.com, enter your email so you can get all the tools and strategies sent directly to you each and every week. Today we are going to be interviewing Ian, the Silverback Butler. He's a pro MMA fighter who started in the Midwest, won gold in the grappling competition there. Also has been in Glory Kickboxing and the most viewed Bellator 131 fight ever. And he is going to talk to us about how he started out with really nothing and despite all odds, against all adversity, was able to become a pro MMA fighter by the age of 24. Ian, thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited that you came on the show because you're the guy that, despite everything pushing against you, you had to succeed. You had to become a pro fighter. And I wanted to go back into your story, just where it all started for you, because you kind of had a tough upbringing.
Right. So where it started for me was I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, Ferguson, Missouri, which is pretty much murder capital, United States right now, And I was going back and forth to San Diego and St. Louis, back and forth. And I was living in homeless shelters in San Diego with me and my biological mom at the time. And that's when I met my adopted mom, Katie Andrews. And she adopted me from my biological mom. They're actually really good friends. They met at a soup kitchen, of all places. And that's how I got adopted. And that's where my life pretty much changed from there, and that's when she instilled in me of like being an athlete. Katie was pretty much she was an Olympic swimmer. So wow. She, really pushed me to be like a world-class athlete and took me to new heights from there.
So she took you in and then kind of taught you all these values about being an athlete.
Totally about being an athlete, and totally changed my mental mind frame of it doesn't matter where you come from. You can always get outside your circle, and where you come from doesn't define you as a person. You can always go beyond and above that in anything, especially in life. And she really helped me become a professional athlete today.
Wow. Sounds like a really special woman.
She is. Very.
Yeah. So tough upbringing. I mean, going from homeless shelters, what was that like, as a kid growing up?
So for me, I thought it was normal, right? Because I'm just a kid, right? Yeah. And then I didn't think it was normal when I started going to school, So I seen people getting picked up in cars, stuff like that, and actually having meals to go home to, and it was rough. It was rough for a while, but I still had the means to actually have a good life in those times too, like I was still an athlete going to school, and I think that's what kind of blurred me being homeless and going through homeless shelters pretty much by doing sports and being on football teams and being on wrestling teams,
Yeah. I mean, one thing you just showed me, kind of like you got a chip on your shoulder. Yeah. Do you feel like that upbringing kind of set you up for your success? Like, do you feel like you're kind of, in the beginning, you were going out to prove something to everybody?
No, for sure. Because it made me have a chip on the shoulder, right? Because I didn't have the brand new cleats, I didn't have the brand new uniform, but I was still faster than everybody else, still stronger than everybody else, right? So I had to feel like I had to work harder because I was behind everybody else, just in life in general, right? So I had to prove that I'm still good no matter where I came from. So it made me push a lot harder, and I still have a chip on my shoulder from today, just because where I came from, and honestly, in where I came from, there's still people going through it today. And not only that, it makes me represent a whole bunch of other people that are still living in those situations right now.
That's good. And I know you do a lot of stuff too to help people who are in that situation, which is just phenomenal. But I like what you said too, that you still have that chip on your shoulder. Some people who have accomplished as much as you have, won fights, become a pro, and you've been like just killing it, one of the most viewed fights ever, they might lose that chip. Do you find that having that chip on your shoulder helps you?
No, for sure. Because and I think what helps is when I go give talks or go to these schools for unfortunate kids and stuff like that, they need somebody to look up to, I think and I think that's what helped me keep my chip while going through further, because they always reach out. I'm very accessible to social media. I like talking to kids because I was that kid in that situation of going to living in homeless shelters. But the cool thing about living in my homeless shelter, it was Salvation Army in a place called Hope. They used to always give me tickets to go to Padre games, Chargers games, stuff like that. So it gave me the resources to go and see all these pros and ask all the questions. How did I get in these situations, you know, and stuff like that. So I think me going, talking to kids and being accessible and telling them how do you become a professional athlete and actually seeing them. And what makes it more powerful is it's different from a teacher telling you like, no, you guys can do this. You guys can come above it. But it's different when a kid actually slept in the same bed that you slept in. Right. It was like, hey, you can actually do this. You know, I was there. I remember I ate the same food you ate. Like, I know how it is.
What's something that you tell these kids, like the mental mindset that they should be focusing on when they're going through these tough times?
I mean, hope for sure. You know, like there's always hope. You're never going to get stuck here for the rest of your life. You know, like things always get better, you know? So like, a lot of people said, like, you're already deep in the hole, you can't get any further, the only way is up, right? So it's kind of like that too, but it's honestly grab a hold, if you can, to a very good mentor. Like, try to enter yourself into a mentor program, you know, and those people can definitely help. Because I think Katie, that adopted me, was my mentor throughout, and that's what really helped me through those situations and throughout.
Yeah, and I know that for like some people, they don't have maybe a mentor, and I always say, just reach out. You know, reach out. I think there's a SCORE is one that does a program for free mentorship, but I really like what you said there because mentors can help show you kind of the way. Yeah. And I think it's so super cool that you mentor the kids that have been in it too. So for you going through it, you know, you were in the Midwest and you won a gold in grappling.
Yeah.
And I know you were also, you were a wrestler in college.
Yeah.
And so you're a college athlete, but there was a shift. Something happened where you kind of fell in love with fighting and decided that's what you were going to do. What happened?
So I was, so even before then, we're going to go a little bit back, right? So I was wrestling in high school. I was top recruit in wrestling. You know, I had offers from, you know, Stanford, Oklahoma, you know, and getting letters from them, you know. Just little like, hey, we're looking at you, not official college offer, but a lot of people were looking at me at the time, you know, and I went to go visit Virginia, and that's one of the places I definitely wanted to go to. And at the time I thought I was doing the normal stuff that high school kids do and experimenting with drugs and alcohol, right? And smoking a lot of weed. And then, at the time I had friends that I was doing drugs with, smoking weed with, were starting to pill pop at the time, and I didn't want to do it. And during wrestling season, I always was on the straight and narrow. Didn't do anything. You know, I took my wrestling serious. You know, I took my athletic abilities very seriously, you know. And it's the time wrestling season is about to come, and smoking weed, like last smoke before I'm going to go into wrestling season. And they're like, hey, you should pop these pills with us, you know. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Like, wrestling season is going to start, you know, and that's not my thing. And they put a prank on me and put a whole bunch of pills in my candy box that I eat candy with and just take it like that. And I swallowed over 20 pills, and I ended up overdosing and dying that night. And I woke up in the hospital.
Wow.
And the nurse said that my heart stopped beating for almost 2 minutes, and we were going to quit reviving you, but something came back, and a heartbeat came back, and we kept on working on you. So you're not even supposed to be here right now. And in that situation, all the colleges found out what happened, and they took away all my scholarships that I ever had, right?
No way.
So I came, like, that was like my biggest dream, right? Like, I'm already living in a situation that, like, I came from nothing, and I'm like, Katie always preaches, like, you gotta go to school, get education, you know?
What does it feel to have your dream, you're living your dream, and I mean, a prank, that's a crazy prank.
Right.
What does it feel to experience that kind of failure, and how did you recover?
It sucks, and it's embarrassing, obviously, right? It's embarrassing. Not only that, high school found out, and they're like, you're not a good environment for a high school, which I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. My high school, like, we have tons of fights, and we have drug dealers and stuff like that. And the high school simulate, you're not a good person to be in the type of environment, so they kicked me out of school.
Wow.
So I had to go get my GED, and I had to go to, like, small clubs to wrestle and still wrestle. So I got my GED at home. My college offers got stripped. So I had to go to a small school in Greenville, Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, where there was, like, cows in the field, stuff like that. Never seen a cow, like, up close like that before. I go to Greenville, super Christian college, right? And Katie, raised me total Christian household. Like the only 2 shows I can watch was Touched by Heaven and Seven Angel, right? At home, right? So, but I'm still thinking this is college, right? And they're like, hey, just to let you know, you can't have girls in your dorm rooms. I'm like, yeah, but they just say that. They're like, no, like you will be expelled if you have girls in your dorm room, right? They're super strict. And I'm
this
like,
is like kind of your last chance right now.
Last chance, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I got to abide by the rules, right? And then Lindenwood came up to do a scrimmage, and they're like, you're Ian Butler. Like, dude, we know you. Like, dude, like, why aren't you at West Virginia? Why aren't you at Mizzou? Why aren't you at these big? I'm like, well, I got in trouble. And they're like, hey, why don't you come with us? And like, we promise you, like, so Lindenwood's NIAI, right? So not Division III, not Division II, but there also were 8 times in the world champions in wrestling, not only in football and all the academic sports in St. Charles, Missouri.
Wow, yeah.
Right? And not only that, but we produced, like, Monty Ball was with me at Lindenwood, and he got drafted to the Denver Broncos. We had a lot of athletes. We had Jonathan Brookins that went to Lindenwood. We had another guy that's wrestling right now named Dura Wynn from AKA. He was in Lindenwood. He was on the national world team. So we had all these great wrestlers that nobody really knew about. So I think Lindenwood was kind of like the Raiders back in the day when they're like, let's just get all these felons on one team so we can win a championship,
Yeah.
So Lindenwood was like, hey, come with us. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to Lindenwood. It was closer to home, and I was at Lindenwood. I was working part-time, and Lindenwood was like, hey, we're going to have to redshirt you, which means like you're on the bench. You can practice, but you can't play, right? It's the first time I've ever been on the bench in my life. So I walked into a gym called Absolute Martial Arts. I'm like, hey, can I still wrestle here and stuff like that? And they're like, yeah. I went in the gym, started wrestling. They're like, hey, our wrestling coach is getting ready to leave. Can you be our wrestling coach here? I'm like, sure. So then after that, they're like, hey, I think you should probably do jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what's jiu-jitsu? Like, well, it's kind of like wrestling, but you get to choke people. I'm like, well, that's dope. I get to choke people while I wrestle. I never used to do that, and straight up wrestling, right?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, they're like, you should kickbox. Like, it'd be kind of cool. I'm like, well, what's that? Like, I'm kind of like a boxing guy. I mean, black urban guy in St. Louis, Missouri, everybody tried to box, right? But like, I don't want to use my feet, like, So I started doing that. I thought it was really cool. And then a month later, I had my first fight. And then, yeah.
So you barely even got into MMA
I barely even got into
before
MMA
having your first fight.
Before I had my first fight.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I gotta just say, and this is one thing I admire about you is just the persistence that you had. To lose your scholarships, to get kicked out of school, to keep wrestling. And I think a lot of times people hit failure, and like a monumental failure like that is really tough to recover from. But they end up giving up, and they stop trying. And that's your spirit. You didn't stop trying. You kept going, even though there was no real offer. Right. There was nothing like showing up, but you knew this is what you wanted to do. You kept pushing forward, and then the offer finally came. Right. So I think that's one thing people forget is that, you might fail, but as long as you're persistent long enough, you will eventually, and you keep working at it, be successful. Right.
Because my thing of failing is not losing a match or not losing a fight or losing something. My thing of failing is not trying to reach your dreams and not trying to, you completely quit and just stop and do something, So failure is not like losing a fight or losing a moment. It's like, why you stop trying? Like, why are you not fighting still? Like, why, like, I just got a normal job. I see that all the time in this sport right now, Yeah. And,
it brings up a good point too. You see it in like pro athletes right now?
Big time.
Wow.
Big time.
Wow. And even kids, just normal people, like there's so many parallels between fighting and life. And that's one thing I want to ask you is just, what do you think like some of the best values that you've learned from fighting that you want to give to, like, you coach and mentor young kids? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, everything's a fight though. Like you just don't have to physically fight in a ring or an octagon to fight, right? Like everything's a fight. Like I think me going through living in a homeless shelter is a fight, honestly.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, or anybody dealing with any personal issues is a fight, like depression or like being obese, trying to get back in shape. That's a fight too, Like everything's a fight, So it's just like, hey, stay strong, right? And I think the key thing is put good people around you for sure to lean on, and keep your head up and just keep trying, and you're going to be okay. And just keep fighting. That's the end of the day.
Keep fighting.
Keep fighting.
I like that, man. Yeah. That's good. I like that a lot. So you're going back. You do your first fight ever,
right?
And you're sitting there, and you don't really know any jujitsu. You know, like, oh, headlock, cool, that sounds fun. What's this? What's that? How was the first experience as an amateur fighter? Like, what happened there?
So a lot of people. So when I talk to these kids, right, I always pan out like because they see me now as like Bellator, fighting Glory, like the greatest marks in the world, right? That's the biggest stage you can get to in the world. So they think when you get into fighting that you're just gonna start there, right? No. My first fight was in a Motel 6 in Eureka, Missouri, right? So
in Eureka, or is it Missouri? I've never heard of the place.
Eureka, it's the reason why you didn't hear of the place, right? Right? So
I can't believe they let people fight in Motel 6s.
I think that's the hidden gem.
Yeah. There you go. So is this like, was there people watching, or is this in the backyard, in the parking lot?
It was a nicer Motel 6. It wasn't like the 49 a night. It was the 69 a night.
Oh, okay.
So they had a conference room, right?
Nice. Okay.
So the cage was set up in a conference room.
Wow.
Right? Not to mention, before I got this fight, I was going to fight 2 or 3 weeks before, and the guy pulled out. So I was going to fight in to step in for somebody like, hey, Ian, like, do you want to fight? This guy pulled out of a fight. Like, look, you can wrestle. I know how to throw a jab. That's it, right? The only thing I know how to do is hit on the ground just from like wrestling people, stuff like that. And like, do you want to fight this guy? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, hey, this guy pulled out because he heard you was a really good wrestler. And I'm like, look, man, I was really amped up for this fight. Like, can you find me something else? They're like, hey, the only guy that wants to fight you is the guy that's 5-0 right now with 4 knockouts and 1 submission win. I'm like, bro, this is like my first fight, like, can I get like something else? He's like, well, that's the only guy that want to fight you right now. So I take the fight, right?
Okay. So not knowing, this is just another parallel to life, right? Where you're like, I'm not knowing, there's so much uncertainty, so much unknown, and yet you said yes anyways. How do you have the courage to say yes? Like, how do you believe in yourself?
Something I really wanted to do.
Okay.
It's something I believed in my skills. I was really scared at the time too. Also, like that's a scary moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this is 4 or 5 years ago. Like, there was no tape on this guy. There was no YouTube video of this guy fighting. Like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, which is even more scarier. It's like the unknown is very scary, right? So that's what I'm getting myself into, right? So I take the fight in Eureka, Missouri at the Motel 6. I'm driving down. There's Confederate flags here and there, right?
Wow.
And so I go to the weigh-ins. I weigh in, and the promoter's like, hey, man, like, can you stay like 10 more minutes? I'm like, no, I'm going to go get something to eat, rehydrate. He's like, yeah, but your opponent wants to size you up. I'm like, well, tell him I'll see you tomorrow. We're fighting tomorrow anyway, right? Which I thought it was very weird. And then I get there. I still haven't even seen the face of the guy I'm facing. Because people think fighting, you see the walkout, you see the stare down and everything. I didn't get that with my first opponent.
Motel 6 doesn't have that?
Motel 6 does not have that, right? So I haven't even seen the face of the guy I'm fighting, right? And so I'm in the back locker room. The locker room is the kitchen at the Motel 6 in the conference room. So while I'm warming up for this fight, they're cooking chicken tenders while I'm getting ready to walk out, right? And so we do roll call. They're like, oh, Corey, here. They're like, all right, Ian, here. They're like, check, right? So I'm warming up, and they're like, oh, Steve. And that's the guy I'm fighting, right? And he goes, here. He was behind me the whole time watching me warm up and everything. And I'm like, no. Shit, like, okay, So I had an assistant coach that was fighting that night too. He's like, this is my last fight I'm going to do. He's an amateur. I have no passion of turning pro. I just want to help you guys grow. He went out there and choked the guy out in 14 seconds, right? And so I'm next, right?
Set the bar a little high.
Yeah, pretty high, right? And from the very beginning, I think he did a very smart idea and go like, look, man, we're not trying to compete with each other. All thing I need you to do is just go out there and win. It doesn't matter if it's 14 seconds or less. Just go out there and win, So it really definitely helped for sure, And then before I'm getting ready to walk out, the door's open. I'm getting ready to make my walk. And they go, we are now going to have a 15-minute intermission. I was like, what? What? Like, so I'm like, all right, so I'm all amped up, getting ready to fight. So I go through adrenaline rush to get ready, and now I'm going through adrenaline dump, right? So those 15 minutes turned out to be 30-minute intermission.
Oh my God.
Right? And my coach gets really pissed and goes to the commission, goes, look, I'm putting you guys on the clock. You better start this fight in like 2 or 3 minutes, right? So getting ready to start this fight. And the walkout to the cage was here to you. That was the walkout, right? So how do you even play music during that? So
did they have music playing?
They did have music playing.
Okay. So
this is the even more part of the odd stock that gets me, right? This guy I'm fighting is from Eureka, Missouri, right? So all these people are here to see him, stuff like that. So they're like fighting out of the blue corner, Ian Butler. So I make the walk, take 2 steps, right? They didn't play any music to me. I came out to silence, right? I had a teammate, I had all my people I trained with in the back of the room. They're like, let's go in. To silence. Most awkward thing ever, right? They announce him. He comes out to music, everything else, people cheering, standing on their feet, and boom, that's the guy I'm fighting. I'm standing away from him, right?
Man.
So they ring the bell. I'm super nervous, touch gloves. He starts hitting me. It's the first time I ever got hit with small gloves. I felt like he was rocking me with every shot. And my mind was like, I'm getting ready to get knocked out right now. I was so out of the realm of anything I'm touching my body. My coach is like, throw a head kick. And I go, ugh. And I foot stomp him, right? After he tells me to throw a head kick. That's how in touch on my body I was. So I go in for a takedown. And they said this guy was really good at jiu-jitsu. So I'm waiting for him to like lock me up in something. And he didn't do anything, you know? And so I start hitting him a little bit. And I'm like, those my first ever punches I ever threw in MMA. We're like on the ground. I hit him a couple of times. I'm like, all right, like he's not really doing anything. And I'm starting to own him on the ground a little bit. So I'm starting to believe in myself while the fight's going on, you know? So end of the first round, second round comes. And my coach goes like, you can finish this guy like right here, right now. Like he doesn't have anything for you on the ground. I come down, second round starts. I take him down and I end up knocking him out. And then, so here's the trip. I heard the referee and the guy were friends. I found this after the fight, right? So I knocked him out. And the referee didn't stop the fight. I'm on top of him, and his body's going like this. And he kind of wakes back up because I hit him again. And then I knocked him out again.
Oh,
and then the referee finally stops the fight. You know? And I finally get to win. And afterwards, I found out that the referee and him was friends. So he tried to give him every chance possible to come back in the fight, you know?
Right, and the guy was 5-0, so he wasn't expecting nobody to come in.
Exactly. And I end up retiring him after that fight.
Wow.
That was his last fight ever. You know,
quite an entry, man, into MMA amateur fighting.
So that was my first fight ever. And then my second fight, I fought at Fisher's Bar and Grill in Belleville, Illinois. And it was a big dining room. It was a big walkout at a bar and grill.
So there's a theme here. Like right? You got like hotels, restaurants.
And I thought I made it at a restaurant because it was a longer walkout and fighters got free wings. So I'm like, I'm in the big leagues now. Right? I'm in big leagues now.
So I look at this and I just like for anybody who is starting out, I mean, that was what, 7-10 years ago or something like that. Yeah. So it's like, that was so long ago and everybody sees now, you know, this amazing pro fighter walking out to big crowds, but we all have humble beginnings. We all start somewhere.
Sure.
Pretty amazing story all in all. I was wondering, what are some of the things that you do? Like, what's the mindset behind being a pro fighter? What do you do on a daily basis to keep your mind and your body ready? Because you fight like 4 times a year.
Yeah, I like to stay active. I like 4 times a year, even 5 for me. You know, like I know people say 3. It's a good time for fighters because, I mean, you get beat up in training camp. I think training camp's probably worse than a fight because you're really getting worked on and then you have to recover after that, you know? But I like to stay really, really active. Just because of like my wrestling background. I was wrestling every weekend during wrestling season, right? So I like to stay active and I think that's how I get better, right? So the daily grind is like Mondays I usually wake up, I go spar, rest, go back, like I might go do like a light session after that. I might do like an MMA session with MMA gloves after that. Tuesday, strength conditioning, wake up, rest, come back, might go do some BJJ afterwards at 3 a.m., at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Come back, rest. I might go hit a run because I always run in training camps to get my weight down.
So you're training like 3-4 times a day.
Almost, yeah.
And you're putting your body through this.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty intense.
Very.
where does the motivation come from?
To be the best in the world, obviously, right? And not only that, but especially for where I come from, like I feel like I'm fighting for a greater purpose beyond me, right? Like
What's that purpose?
It's to help everybody that's going through life situations and changes, Like I helped started this charity called Andrew's Angels, which was the name of my mom, that I can be blessed that I can bring kids to my fight in certain situations from homeless shelters and stuff like that and provide them to come to the fight. And I'm sponsored by Dave & Buster's, so I can come and bring them out before the day before, have them come out, hang out with me, talk, play video games, and I can provide stuff like that, which is totally life-changing because it changed my life that way. Wow. Hanging out with athletes just like that, I think the biggest one was when I was homeless in the homeless shelter. I was in elementary school and I was a football player at the time, right? And I got picked to go to Foot Locker with my favorite football player to pick out a favorite pair of shoes. And I picked Junior Seau, right? At the time. So I was hanging out with Junior Seau, picking out.
You got to hang out with Junior Seau?
As a kid.
Wow.
Pick out my favorite pair of shoes and hang out with them. And I think if I can create more opportunities like that, like, dude, I'm hanging out with Ian Butler at Dave & Buster's, like playing Mario Kart, like, just hanging out, then I did my job for sure.
That it lends to the power of a kid having a hero and somebody to look up to. Which, who is your hero? Who in your life do you look up to?
So my hero in wrestling right now is Jordan Burroughs, like very good family man. I think he always sends the right message. I think he sends the right messages not only when he wins, but when he loses. I think that's a very big thing,
Like what do you mean by that when he loses?
Like, I'm a sore loser. Right? I don't think nobody hates losing, but every time I lost, I'll always pick my game up, right? So I think L stands for lesson, right? When you lost, right?
I like that.
And Jordan Burroughs was a big time influence on that. Like, I remember when he's a 2-time national champ. He's a gold medalist, right? I think he's an 8-time world champ in wrestling, right? But I remember back in the day when he was a freshman and sophomore, nobody really knew who Jordan Burroughs was. He was tiny, he was small, and he tore his ACL his sophomore year. I went through an ACL tear too, and that's when I discovered who Jordan Burroughs was, because he was competing on the Olympic team. And he told a story of how tearing his ACL changed his life for the better, because they're like, hey, you're really a bit too small. Maybe you should put on more size, during the season and stuff like that. So he bumped up a different weight class. He put on size and his life changed from that. Totally quit depleting his body, trying to break down. And I started following him after that. And he was just made life-changing things that I follow in my life too, Yeah. And he always has the same dream it, do it. And that's the same tattoo I had tatted on me too, was dream it, do it. And he always says that too.
Before even knowing about him, you had the same one?
I had the same one, yeah.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, and he's just very big. And
life is kind of like big coincidence, right? Yeah.
Big coincidence. I love gold, right? Look at my hair color. I love gold too, and his handle on Instagram is all I see is gold. That's nice. When he was going for his gold medal, right? And he's just and he was this confident before he won his gold medal, in London. And he goes, all I see is gold. I'm going to win gold. He was that confident. He wasn't cocky, but he was extremely confident and sincere in how he was, and his mannerisms and the way he talked was just very inspiring. And that's why I latched onto him a lot. And and that's became my role model today.
That lens, something that I talk about a lot is just raising the bar. And it's an acronym for beliefs, action, results, right? So I believe that what you believe dictates the amount of action you take, which then influences the results you get, whether good or bad. So if you believe you suck at life, you're not going to take a lot of action and your results are shitty. No wonder, right? But if you believe all I see is gold, you take the action to support that, you work your ass off every single day of your life, then eventually he believes a gold medal.
Right.
But I believe beliefs are so powerful. And you've got a winning mindset, a pro mindset, a champion's mindset. What are some beliefs that you have that have really helped you along the way?
I mean, dream it, do it is one of mine for sure. And I say that because, so my first ever fight I went to was in Strikeforce. So it was a big promotion that the UFC bought. That's how big it was, that it threatened the UFC and the UFC bought it, right? And the owner at the time was Scott Coker. And I remember they were in St. Louis, and some of my favorite fighters today, like Alistair Overeem fought for a world title, and now my management managed me and Alistair Overeem. So it's funny how things come full circle, right? And not only the owner that started Strikeforce is my boss today because he runs Bellator, right?
Wow.
So I was like, I'm going to be on that stage, right? I didn't make it to Strikeforce, but I kind of made it to Bellator, and now me and Scott Coker are on a texting basis, and he knows me, you know? So it kind of came full circle. I'm a Christian too, so I believe in the word ego, but I use it as edging God out, right? So like anything I do is like, if I ever get cocky or anything, I'm like, well, no, that's not like a little Christian values I need to have, you know? So like, that's something I definitely believe in too. Like I definitely believe in like mentors and surrounding myself with world champions because iron sharpens iron. I think that's a very huge thing though too, you know?
I like that. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah. Over at my training center at Ruka, when I trained with Jason Perillo, like my favorite fighter was BJ Penn, and he coached BJ Penn through both of his world championships. That's my coach today, you know? And I think that's a little thing, iron sharpens iron, and dream it, do it kind of way, right? Like he's in my corner now, and we have world champions like Michael Bisping, Chris Cyborg, Rafael Dos Anjos, you know, and I train with them guys on the regular. And I think some of that kind of sprinkles off on you a little bit.
Oh, 100%. I mean, who you surround yourself with absolutely changes your life. I mean, you're getting exposed to new things, new ideas, and new moves, new thought processing. And, you know, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So it's like, if you don't expand your knowledge as a fighter, you're going to lose your edge. Right. And so I really, really like that. And when it comes to dream it, do it. A lot of people have big goals and aspirations. Right. And then they maybe do it. Right. But it doesn't work out. What would you say to them?
Keep trying. Like, who cares if it doesn't work out? I think that's the failing. I think that's what the failing part is. Like, I think people are so afraid to fail, right? I think one of my mentors is Tim Hendricks. Like, he's one of the best tattooers in the world. He was on the guest show of like Ink Masters and helped start Ink Masters. And he just created this toddler tattoo, Le Payson, right? He made all these drawings.
For toddlers, you said?
For toddlers and kids. It's like one of the top selling things out right now, because what toddler doesn't want to have a tattoo that you can like wipe off, right? And
at least the parents like that it wipes off.
The parents love it that it wipes off, right? But every kid like loves that, right? And I think the biggest thing he ever taught me was just like, people have all these amazing ideas. They're just too afraid to actually put it on paper and just do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Like, and I think the failing part and people loving to fail, like, you know how many times Walt Disney failed and like doing a proposal for Disneyland? Like thousands of times, over thousands of times, right? It's the same thing for the owner of Amazon too, thousands of times, you know? I lost in Bellator before. I'm still in Bellator. Like, so like they took a L, they revisioned everything they had from the failing, and they made it a lot better, and they finally got their approval stamp, and they moved on from there, you know? So, yeah.
It's funny. One of the things that I often say when I'm doing motivational talks is this quote by Mike Tyson. It's just, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. and then it's like, now what? Yeah. Now what are you going to do? And I think that talks about like grit. It talks about hunger and motivation. Like, are you hungry enough to achieve these goals to get back up? Because the biggest thing that I see, and you're a testament to this, just how many times you've been knocked down, how many adversities you've had to overcome, is just that you're not going to get knocked down once or twice. You might get knocked down 10, 20, even 100 times before you get back up and finally you're a success. Right. So I just think that, like, when you talk about doing that, how do you keep getting back up?
So I think it's my own goals, and my purpose is to be like one of the best in the world. And I think that's my purpose. Like, I'm not the best in the world yet, so I gotta keep going. Right? I gotta keep on the treadmill and just keep going, right? So even though when I do get knocked down, I'm like, all right, like, let me try to revise it, because things are different when you get punched in the face, right? So I think, I'm a big fan of football, like audibling, right? Calling an audible, right? You just gotta call an audible at that moment, and those plays are definitely will work besides the other plays, right? And I think it's the same thing in life too. Like, that didn't work, so let's call a different play. This play will definitely work for sure. You know, and I think that's what really helps me just keep going in life also too. Every time I get knocked down, like, it's to reach that main goal also too. Right?
Yeah, it sounds exactly like what I talk about with a GPS system. It's like,
Honestly,
right, yeah. Call an audible, like if you hit a detour, like the GPS system doesn't go, you're screwed, go back home. Yeah. It's like, it just reroutes you. So,
yeah, and I think so too. Like you can have different goals around the way, like when you get older too. Like I want to become a champion, right? And then you become a champion, like, oh, so what else is next, right? And people are like, right? Like, I'm going to become a 2-time world champion, different weight class. I'm going to do something nobody else did before. And then you revise your goal, and then you have different goals around the way. Like, one of my goals is to be one of the top grapplers, and I won the Midwest Grappling Championship, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the goal from here? I'm like, all right, let's try to be a champion in MMA now. Let's try to add that in and do different stuff from there, you know? So, I think that's the thing. Your goal is honestly going to change, because I think things in life is just like, oh, I have a good paycheck, like, but I want to make more money, right? And then you can make more money, like, I think I can make more than that, you know? I think bars, like you said, bars always get higher and higher. Every time you achieve the goal, it's just going to get higher. And I think that's why I always get back up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one thing that like someone once told me, and you see it on videos all the time, like social media videos that go viral, is where like some kid's getting picked on, like obviously smaller, but knows MMA. And like all of a sudden just kicks this dude's ass. And you're like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah.
And someone once said, like, 6 months of MMA could save your life. And then you train people in MMA. What are some of the principles that you teach people when it comes to MMA? Do you think that's like something every average person should learn in just like,
I think
protect
every
themselves?
Average person. So I think people think of self-defense, they think about like kickboxing and boxing, right? But I think MMA is just multiple martial arts come together, mixed martial arts, right?
Right.
I think one of the best ones is jiu-jitsu for sure. It's on the ground, because I think 90% of fights end up on the ground anyway. Like in a bar situation, somebody ends up tackling somebody, right?
Yeah.
And I think even for females, I think that's the first thing you should probably start off with, or even with kids, I think it helps build your self-esteem, and not only that, but it helps you think in a different way too. Like jiu-jitsu is a very beautiful art, and it's kind of like chess. Like you kind of want to chessmate somebody, especially if somebody else knows jiu-jitsu, it's a chess match now, right? And I think that's one of the best things I can teach somebody too, and especially when they're coming in and learn to box and do MMA, it's just them building up their self-confidence that they can do it, because it's going to carry over to like whatever lifestyle they're doing, or whatever job they're doing, or whatever they're doing at home too.
Yeah, that's so cool. You mentioned that too, because I've actually heard that from a lot of different athletes and fighters with like boxing and all that other stuff, is what it does to your confidence.
Yeah.
So, you're coming in, and what is it about it? I'll just say for me, I know the first time we did a little sparring action, and for disclaimer, like he can kick my ass, no problem. So he was like fighting like a toddler, right? But it's getting over the fear of getting hit, and then getting over the fear of hitting back. And, for me, that's a lot with life, right? It's like, oh, I'm afraid that I'm going to get hurt. And so you don't take the punch. Well, like when we were sparring, I took the punch, right? Okay, well, let's take the punch. And then I'm afraid that if I like swing and miss, I'm going to fail or something like that. And so that's how it builds up confidence in me. But I was curious too, if clients and stuff and just building confidence in kids, how do you do that in your sessions?
It's the same way. And I think it's just building a relationship and just talking to them too, because I think the same thing I have as an athlete that a normal regular person has, like going to a big board meeting or something like that, right? And I think the greatest thing is when I surround myself with people, with other fighters, we're going to swing around and get back to this question, right? And ask them, how do you deal with being in the locker room getting ready to fight? It goes like, well, I try to do this. I try to move around, try to listen to music and stuff like that. It's the same advice I give to somebody going to a big board meeting or same pitch, like try to do something that's comfortable, because every fighter that's a world champion and the best in the world, or any athlete, is scared and nervous too. They just know how to deal with it. It's just like a little fire, right? Like you have a bonfire, if you can control it the right way, become a nice little bonfire. If you let it get out of control, it becomes a wildfire and it can destroy everything, And I think the biggest thing in here is just getting your confidence and controlling your fire, and let it know when to grow at the right time, and let it know when to bring it down at the right time too. I think that's the biggest thing I can teach like client here and talking to them.
And that's an awesome analogy, actually, because you don't want to burn the whole place down.
You don't want to burn the whole place down.
So one of the big things with Unleash Success is we talk about the 80-20 rule, and basically saying like 80% of our actions or 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. Okay. And the key is really knowing which actions to take.
For you, I really want to understand, like, what are some of the best things that we should do to build kind of this like champion mindset that you've been working on, and something that we can take home today that might help us gain the confidence, gain the courage, so that when we get knocked down, we're ready to get back up and handle the fight.
So my champion mindset is I always try to get better every single day, right? I always try to have a mentor with me that I can talk to on a phone, right? Like I have several, like I have my manager, I have my business manager. Those are the people I look up to too. You know, I have a head coach in different realms, strength conditioning, boxing, wrestling too, right?
Wow.
So I have a lot of people surrounding me, right? So I'm a big believer in that it takes a village to raise a child, right? And that's kind of like, I'm the child, they're the village, right? And I think that's a good aspect to have. I always try to have somebody better than me with me at all times. Not if I'm sparring somebody or talking to somebody. So if you're an exec at a meeting, this guy is like head of the office and stuff like that, and people are afraid to talk to him because he's killing numbers. Those are the person you want to be friends with, you know, to grow up with, right? Because you're definitely going to learn from something. You might get your ass kicked. Like I get my ass kicked in sparring session with world champions, but I get to learn something at the same time too, you know? And I think that's the biggest thing. And that's where iron sharpens iron kind of thing. You might not be like the big knife or the big machete in the sword, but you can get to that point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. And like just having mentors is so important.
Big time.
Whether it's in fighting or business or life. You know, I look for mentors the same way as you in fitness and in relationships and business, finances, everything, because I always want to make myself better as well.
Right.
So I got a lot of respect for that. I know that's really valuable. So where can everybody find you online if they want to connect with you and kind of watch one of your fights? I know you got a fight coming up in January, right?
January 26th at the Forum in LA, live on the Paramount Network or on DAZN, like a new little app that you can watch all the fights at.
Yeah. So, and that's going to be Ian the Silverback Butler. I told him I'd have to say it because sometimes people mess that up for some reason. Speaking of Silverback, where did you get that name from?
I got my name from my first fight. So my assistant coach at the time is a big believer. He loves animals, right? So he's just like, dude, the way that you hit the bag on the ground is kind of like a silverback ground and pound. Like silverbacks always smash stuff on the ground, right? And he goes like, but they're very protective of their family too, right? And I see my team as my family, right? So having my teammates there that night supporting me was like protecting them. He's like, dude, you got to protect your family. Like, dude, you're a silverback in the jungle. And he goes, don't let people fuck with your family. And you're going to go out there and smash this dude. And I ended up knocking him out on the ground, and that's became the silverback.
Nice, man. Yeah. That's good. And that really suits you. Not just a beast in the fight, but also someone who protects their family.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Cool. So we got January 26th. Where's it at again? At
the Forum in LA. And you can reach me on social media, Ian Butler MMA on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to ask you, you've had so much success as a pro fighter up until this point. And for you, what is your next level of success?
Next level of success is getting a championship belt. It doesn't matter what promotion it is. It could be Bellator, it could be ONE, it could be ONE FC, it could be in Glory, and getting several, because one's not just good enough for me.
I love that hunger. That's awesome, man. Well, Ian, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed the show and learned something of value, the one ask that I have is please go subscribe, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you leave us a 5-star rating or review, that absolutely helps us get our message out there. Each week, I'm going to continue to interview amazing people, and we're going to break down their tools and strategies to help get you real results. Feel free to visit the website, unleashsuccess.com, and subscribe to our newsletter so you get updates each week. And remember, knowing is not enough. Knowledge alone is not power. Action is. Because action is the only way you're going to get the results you want in life and truly live the life of your dreams. So take some action, subscribe to the podcast today, and get ready to unleash success in you.